ever found yourself getting ready to engage in a romantic relationship? Maybe you're meeting people on dating apps like Hinge or Bumble, Tinder, Grinder, or maybe you're talking on social media platforms. That's how we connected our relationship back in college by talking in those spaces.
And she was lurking.
I wasn't lurking, but we did make a connection. So I could imagine you go through the phases of talk, meet, get things going. Maybe you're in the beginning stages of a nice relationship, but always the first conflict arises.
And you're like, whew. Oh, but before we start, let's introduce ourselves.
Yeah, we're the Littles. I'm Camesha.
My name is Chad.
Yeah, and we have been married now for almost 13 years.
Yeah, 13.
But we started our foundation and we started dating in college many moons ago. So
Yeah, back to when we first started dating, I know you were leading into the conflict that we had, and that conflict that new couples or burgeoning couples may experience. Our conflict was because of social media. It started from when I was dating this person previously.
But you are now dating me.
Yes, dating her, my wife, Camesha. But I was dating this person previously. And they, in her friend group, decided, because a guy that one of her friends was deciding to break up with, he felt like the relationship was no longer serving him, and they decided to just mess up his car by putting sugar in his gas tank, slashing his tires, putting all kind of stuff over his window. It was atrocious.
Yeah. So people doing bad things, but get back to us. When he started dating me, the conflict arose because I expected him to, make us official, and not just us official, but Facebook, social media,
IG
online,
official.
IG
all
official,
of it, all the above.
And did you?
And I wanted to, but at the beginning, I wanted to protect my peace and I wanted to protect my car that I had built from the ground up, essentially. But realizing I'm like, that car is not important. I can hide it, but I don't want to hide my relationship.
And let's just say our first conflict started off a little bumpy.
Yeah.
I was not hearing that. I didn't want to hear all the excuses about why we couldn't become official. But it did help us start figuring out how to, get through and work through it. So what ended up happening?
We met somewhere. We met in the middle. Honestly, I put her on all my social medias and decided, like, you know what? They come mess with my car. They mess with my car at this point.
Period. Okay. No. But we did get to an end result eventually. And really, because we talked it through. And so there's a lot of different things we learned from that first conflict to where we are now, 13 years later. And so, I don't know if there's something helpful that we can share. We'd love to, give some tips and advice to you. So I don't know. The first thing I think about, though, when we got ready to get into a relationship that was more important even than talking things out and communication was really just knowing ourselves. So just like him having his past relationships, I had a few of my own, and some of them didn't end so hot. They weren't really great. And so I wanted to be really intentional before we reconnected or before I got into another relationship with someone else to know what I needed or wanted out of a relationship. And more importantly, about what I was going to allow others to do to me. So, to really be transparent, after some of those previous relationships, I was intentional about making sure that people would not disrespect me, especially in public spaces. And there was always a really very firm, clear boundary that I wouldn't accept any types of aggressive arguments in a way that would threaten or actually lead to violence, right? So those things for me were like deal breakers, no goes, not going to have them. And that was really important for me to know before I came into the relationship. Did you have any?
Yeah, for me, it was somebody who was going to be there, have my back. I really didn't like conflict. I didn't like arguing to the point where people lose their temper and say things, they might regret. I'm like, well, part of me felt like that was part of the reason you want to tell me anyway. You were already harboring that, so you just finally said it. Somebody who is not going to cheat on me. Somebody who honestly respect me as I would respect them, because that's one thing I really wanted in my next relationship.
Yeah, so I think important for in addition to us really knowing what we wanted and what boundaries we personally had coming into the relationship, we had to figure out what each other needed, and so I think we had to kind of meet each other where we were at and figure out what other information we were bringing into the space. And I think back to when we first started dating in college. You know, we were on a college budget, so we did cheap dates. We'd go out and do fun things together. And one of those was we would go to bookstores and like go to the relationship section and read different books and answer questions with one another about what our backgrounds and just to learn more about each other.
Yeah.
And one question that always stood out that I really enjoyed and actually had to like take a hard pause for a second was what about your relationships that you've seen in your life, right? From the people that you know, your parents, your grandparents, all those folks. What about those relationships, informs who you are today? And I was like, ooh, that was a tough one. So when I thought about it for me, the relationships that I had seen, like my grandparents on both sides, my parents, all my aunts and uncles that were married, those relationships seem to be really solid, committed relationships and long. My grandparents are married for over 60 years. My parents have been married for a really long time, and most other relationships were, they seem pretty solid. But Chad, when he answered that question, had a different answer.
Yeah, mine was the opposite. I haven't really never seen a healthy relationship. All the relationships that I have seen, honestly, weren't that great for the people involved, especially when they had kids. The longest relationship I had seen in my life and my family was 20 years plus, but was it healthy? No. So that's why, like me and my friends, who we also came from a kind of similar background, of not having healthy relationships, with seeing that in our families, we decided, you know what, we're going to be like brothers to each other, and we're going to take the best qualities that we found ourselves, and like, this is how we're going to be friends and how we're going to stay lifelong friends. But, that doesn't transfer over to a romantic relationship. So that takes what me and Camesha had to do. We had to work at it, just like me and my friends worked at trying to develop a good relationship and develop healthy aspects of it.
Yeah, I think we took those lessons, right, that we had from those various spaces and figured out how do we make that and pull it into our relationship so that we can be a more solid unit. I know in particular, one thing we thought about early on was what was going to be our conflict resolution style, right? Like how did we handle when we got into an argument or whenever something was in a disagreement? And we both had different approaches there too. I personally like to come into the argument, hash it out really quickly, say my piece. You're going to hear it all, every single point I need to articulate. And then afterwards, I'm good and I'm done. And I'm not even thinking about it again. But for Chad, that wasn't the case.
No, I need at least, I used to be like, I need 48 hours.
More like a week.
Sometimes, because I was very conflict averse, because when people started bombing me with emotions and everything that usually in my experience was very negative, I shut down in order to protect myself. It became a defense mechanism for me, and realizing, oh, okay, I can't keep doing this because this is the person I want to be with. I plan on being with the rest of my life. So I can't keep shutting down. So that's where we want to kind of talk about number two, like meeting your partner where they're at. So we had to come in together because you want to have those two roads come together and be one. And what we did was essentially, I said 48 hours more. I was like, no, let's dial it down.
I had to bring it down, right? We couldn't wait for 48 hours or a whole week to talk about disagreements. But I also had to like wait a little bit of time and not just bombard him right away. So I think we kind of settled on 12 hours, right? Like we try to like give each other some space to think through things. But then he had to go quicker. I had to slow down. And then we eventually were able to have those conversations.
Yeah, our overall goal was not to go to sleep mad at one another.
Yeah, and even in college, right? So that was hard, especially his busy football schedule and all that. Him being a student athlete, it was tough to manage, but we made it work. And I think, like, what would you say is the underlying thing, undergirding all of that?
Oh, communication.
Communication, right? Yeah, I think that was a key thing, is making sure that we just talk about it. I will say, for me personally, in college specifically, I was, for the first time having some independence that I hadn't had in a lot of other spaces. And that sometimes led to me being just a little selfish. So when I came into our relationship, I wanted to focus on me. And so I wanted to always get the responses that I needed. And the challenge within the relationship is that it's not one-sided, right? We had to have those conversations and actually confront the conversations that we were having.
And by confronting those, not always using you statements, because you in itself is a very confrontational word. You might not think it is, but when you start blaming people, say you, that takes the person down. Like I said, it creates a wall, and that person no longer wants to hear what you have to say because you just attacked him for the better part of your argument.
Correct. And I used to use you statements a lot. And so I think one thing I really focused on was trying to be more thoughtful in how I communicated with Chad, because that was important to me, right? So we really did. We both made adjustments and started having those, I statements instead of you statements.
Like I feel this way about how this happens. I used to observe this happening in my life. How can we apply it into our relationship?
Yeah, no, that's really real. I think the other thing too, so back to our like little coffee dates, we used to do some questionnaires, and one of them was about what's your conflict style, back to like the Teen Vogue and the, what's the other book? I don't remember. Those magazine quizzes.
A lot of them.
But one of Cosmo, that's what I was thinking. I don't know if y'all still read that, but maybe it's on Instagram or TikTok, the survey that asks you about how do you handle conflict. And our conflict style that we both recognized mine was avoidant, and his
was avoidant as well. Go figure.
Yeah, not a good pair. And so both of us knowing that avoidant was our combo, we had to not avoid conflict and actually confront it head on. And so I think knowing that was helpful, because then we would not, wait, not talk about things, let it fester, which I can imagine today could end up in just not having a relationship, right? I'm not going to deal with it because I don't want to talk about it. Instead, if you think that this is important and it's valuable, you actually have to confront the conversation.
Yeah, head on. And don't let it fester, honestly. Because the longer you wait, the worse it gets. Because the things left unsaid, or guess what? Unsaid. And your partner will never know, and you never be able to fix the problem that's happening.
So what would you say? What are our takeaways if we were to boil all this down?
I would say, okay, defining your boundaries again, meeting your partner where they are, and communication. We finally got it right. Oh my God.
We practiced that like a million times.
It really took a minute. And before we let you go and like you go on with your day, just a quick activity that you and your partner could do together. Like Camesha said earlier, I want you to think about a relationship that was good, that was healthy from your perspective, and see what that looks like for y'all, and see what it looks like for you. And also, the other question you could add to it: have you had those healthy relationships in your past, and what key takeaways could you take away from that?
Yeah, and know your own boundaries, right? And what things you will accept and what you won't accept in any relationship, so you're really clear about that going in. But I will say, just like our practice on trying to get to say communication together, don't forget that navigating really disagreements and discord in relationships takes practice. So I will say, no matter where you're at in your dating journey, whether you're single, looking to mingle, or actually in a committed relationship, these things are, things that will evolve over time, but just being thoughtful and intentional about them can help you along the way.
Yes, and we do believe in you. We know you got this. Go ahead and do it.
All right. Take care, everybody.